tear, it falls and hits the ground. A tree, it falls without a sound. A bird, it calls and sends you home. A man, he sits in the cold all alone.
Hi, Sabrina. Thank you so much for joining me on the Joy of Sunflowers. Please introduce yourself a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Sabrina. I'm 35. I live in Canada, and I have been trying to conceive since 2019. And pretty much during the pandemic, I started creating an online platform to connect with others because I found that it was very hard um, to really talk about what I was going through because not a lot of people in real life either talk about it or that I knew were going through it. So I've been advocating for women's health, infertility, and endometriosis for a few years now, and I'm still in the trenches of it all, but still very hopeful.
Yeah, it's a strange space, isn't it? Like there's just so much to it, and like when you peel back some layers, there's more, and
Absolutely.
you just don't see it until you start kind of getting through to it. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and then when you get more diagnosis, you're like, great, thanks. Now I'm
So many diagnoses. That's the thing. I'm like, okay, now I have so many. Can we just like stop at this and then it's a lot to handle, but I mean, I'm grateful as well to be able to have answers. I know a lot of people are going through it and they don't have answers. So there is, obviously some positives to it, being
Mm.
able to kind of find out more about your own health. So
Yeah, and having that sort of almost like a list of what you can do. But yeah, I think it's so weird because there's like pros and cons of knowing and not knowing, because not
100%.
knowing, you can kind of be ignorant to it to it all. But then if you know, then
Mhm.
there's, that checklist, but then you also want the checklist if you don't have it. So
Yes,
yeah,
100%.
it's just tricky no matter where you are. So let's start with the very beginning. Did you know you always wanted to have kids, or was it something that you kind of went towards?
Yeah, I mean, I always want to have kids. I remember when I was like very young, I had this vision of having like five kids, which now that is just crazy to me. But I always did, and I actually grew up in a household where my mom had a daycare, so I was surrounded with kids my entire life. I've always felt very comfortable around kids. And then when I was going through university, I was actually a nanny, so I nannied for many years. So my entire kind of life, as far as I can remember, I wanted to have kids. I always envisioned having children at a younger age. However, I had a previous partner who wanted to wait. And so when you are in a relationship, you kind of have compromises, and I did. And so I kind of waited a little bit later. And unfortunately, now looking back, I wish I had started earlier just so we could have maybe prevented some of the challenges that I've gone through. But yeah, absolutely, my entire life, I've always wanted to have been open to, having biological children. And then I always kind of wanted to adopt my last child. That was kind of how I envisioned it. Obviously, life doesn't always work out the way that you envision it, but I know we're going to have children. I just don't know how exactly it's going to all unfold at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I know anyone whose life is where they expected it to be. Like,
Yeah.
like even people who like it comes, it's really easy, and they get pregnant and they have babies, and it's, even
Yeah.
there's no oh wow, yes, this is exactly what I pictured. We all just have these
Right?
far out
No.
dreams when we're kids, and and then real life happens and things
Mhm.
happen, but no, it's life.
Life happens. And that's just it. Because I feel like before infertility, and this is very naive of me, but I was like, okay, I'm going to have like a boy, and then I'm going to have a girl, and then I'm going to adopt my third. Like it was very like as if I could choose all of that and be like, they're going to be exactly 2 years apart because my brother's 2 years older. And I was like, I love that relationship. That's exactly how it's going to unfold. And now you're like, just like praying, just hoping for like one, right? So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, it just completely changes your kind of perspective of what you're hoping comes out of life. So it changes you, I think. for sure.
Yeah, I think as well, like after you've had like a loss, or you're going through infertility, yeah, it just puts things into perspective, because
Yeah.
you're just like, oh yeah, I made all those plans too. Like I'm gonna have, kids every 2 years, and they're gonna be 2 years apart. And my body was like, no, no, you can't do that. Like
Right.
I
Yeah.
had 3 kids naturally to start, but like I couldn't do the 2 year thing. Like
Yeah.
there's plenty of women who can, but no, my body was like, no, no, no. You're recovering. We can't do this right now.
That's funny. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's amazing. And yeah, I think like, even like when you look at medical journals and stuff, and they're like, oh no, you should get pregnant every 2 years. It's like, that not everyone is like that. Even women who
Right.
it comes easy to. No, and like I said, I'm here, I'm doing this, so I had 2 losses. So there you go. Just because you
Yeah.
have kids doesn't mean you're not going to have them. So there you go.
Yeah.
Um, so moving into your story, so how did you go from sort of the waiting, and then meeting who you're with now, and
Yeah, it's like such a long story. I'm going to try to make it a little bit short, but when I was yeah, so in 2019, I was 32 years old, started trying to conceive with my ex-husband, and then very, very shortly into that, I found out that I had a polyp, so I had to go see a gynecologist right away, and then it kind of just spiraled, and we found out that I have severe endometriosis because they were able to see the cyst inside of my ovaries. Um, and then I want to say it was like about 6 months into trying to conceive. The gynecologist just referred me to the clinic. She said, a lot of people who have severe endometriosis, like they, rather than waiting the 1 year, they just send you off within 6 months to really try to, well, to try to give you success. And I was very hesitant at first, to be honest, because I was like, well, no, like I'll be okay. I wasn't ready to really jump into it. But then I did. And then we found out about my endometriosis, my stage 4 and whatnot. I had undergone a excision surgery with an incredible surgeon here in Ottawa, where he diagnosed me with stage 4 endometriosis. Within 5 minutes of waking up from that surgery, I found out that I needed to have a bowel resection because the endometriosis all wrapped around my bowels. It was on all my organs, including my diaphragm. So they were able to excise everything, except for what's on my diaphragm. So it's still here to this day. And then a few months later, I had a bowel resection. But just to back it up, so I had my excision surgery in June of 2021. And I had done my first egg retrieval, in April of that year. So just 2 months before. So the idea was get my egg retrieval, then have surgery, and then a couple of months or a few months later, go and do my transfer. So summer came and went, and it was September, and I was preparing for my frozen embryo transfer. And then the day before we were supposed to start our baseline for that, my ex-husband decided that he didn't want to do this anymore. So he had mentioned that just the struggles from infertility, medical appointments, all that, he just couldn't really see the clear picture anymore. And so that part ended. And that could be an entire whole conversation, but I'll just kind of keep that brief. So at that point, like I mentioned, I always knew I wanted to have children, and that really wasn't going to stop me. So I ended up having to adopt those embryos. So they were all legally mine and all that. So I went through that process. And then, so I was kind of on this journey as like a solo mom by choice kind of thing. And luckily this community was incredible. So I connected with so many women who were going through it. And then I was like, okay, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it too. I just need kind of like the support from everyone. And so I was kind of going through that. I went through one transfer, and then that one failed. It was a perfect embryo. It was genetically normal. There was really like a 70% chance it would work, and it just didn't. No implantation, absolutely nothing. And during that time, I had actually met my current partner. I mean, we were just friends. So the backstory on that one is kind of, it's great. So my best friend, Sam, that I've known since I was like 4 years old, is his best friend. So we've had this mutual best friend for 17 years and never met before because we had just had two different circles of friends, which is crazy. We didn't meet in passing like years ago, but we were both in relationships. So, you know, it is what it is. So we kind of started off as like friends, and he very much knew that I was deep into like fertility treatment and all of that. So we kind of like connected, and we just our like relationship started off as like a friendship and all of that and foundations, and we just chatted all the time, and it was really great. And then one thing led to another, and then here we are embarking on this journey together. So I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. He really is an incredible partner. We want the same things in life. Yeah, so that's how I met him. And now where was I on this? Okay, so then I ended up having to transfer my other embryo. So we were newly dating. He was aware that I was going to do that. You know, we were good with it, and that one also failed with like no explanation. Why is another euploid embryo not implanting? It just didn't make sense. And then I ran out of embryos because I have diminished ovarian reserve, so I don't produce a lot of eggs to begin with. So that's it. So I was like, okay, so we're back at zero. I'm like, what do we do now? And so we decided to do a round together. So we did that in 2022. Yeah. So last May. And then we ended up with like 2 embryos to transfer, which we did in August of last year. And it worked. I got pregnant. It was like the greatest day to find out that it had worked. And unfortunately, you know, at our like 6-week, 5-day ultrasound, we found out that I had miscarried, but my body hadn't recognized it. So we had no idea that I had miscarried. So that was really hard. Obviously, still it's hard to even talk about it. And so again, we were out of embryos. So we've just done another egg retrieval in January. We have 2 embryos. We decided not to test them this time because there's only 2. So we have no idea if they're normal or not, but we're gonna just keep our fingers crossed. And we're actually doing one last final egg retrieval just coming up. So I started my medication yesterday for my priming, and then in a month we are done, and I've like hit my limit. That's it. So that's where we're at. That's my story in a nutshell.
Wow, that's such an incredible story as well, that you went through the journey, started it off with a husband, and yeah, couldn't stick it.
And that's the thing.
I never understand that.
Honestly, that's the thing that like a lot of people don't talk about is like the impact that it has on a relationship. And it does. And I mean, some people will be like, you know, it made us stronger. And I do believe that it can. But I also think that when things go bad, people don't really talk about it because a lot of people, it does work out, right? If it's normal, 70% of the time, it will work out. That those people that go through it and that aren't able to, or couples that just don't want to do it anymore, or whatever it is, it happens a lot. And when I opened up about it, I had, you know, women come and reach out and say, you know, my relationship is struggling. I don't know if we're going to make it. And there's also that, I think, almost like a shame or embarrassment that comes with it because you just feel like you failed in some ways, and then you blame yourself for what it is. And it's no one's fault really, except for the person who isn't able to be that support, right? And the person that walks away, that's all on them. But I can understand kind of the guilt that you feel because I certainly felt that. And I thought, you know, if everything would have been normal, would I have gone through all of this? You know, would things be different? And that's something we'll never know. But having said that, I'm super grateful now to have a partner that I don't have to question whether or not he would have stayed if something happens. You know, we're in it together, and I know he's not going anywhere. And that's exactly the kind of partner that you want in life. So for that part, I will never say I'm grateful for infertility or anything like that because I don't want to give it any kind of like positive twist to this thing that's so horrible. But if there is that silver lining, like it is Curtis, and I'm just so grateful for him, truly.
Yeah. And it's so true. Like, you want a partner who's going to stay with you thick or thin, like, in the tough times. And yeah, I guess yeah, we don't want to silver lining it, or like, but at least there was something good that came of it, in terms of you're not with someone who gets going when the going gets tough.
Exactly.
So um
Yeah.
oh, I've seen pictures of you and Curtis, did you say?
There it is. Yeah.
And you guys are so cute. Like one of
Thanks.
your posts, I was like, that's so beautiful. Because you were like gonna do another retrieval, and I was just like, bless.
I
I didn't
know.
realize it was such a new relationship as well, and that's just so lovely that he's jumped straight in. Like, that's amazing. I love it.
I sometimes it's like they say, like when like truly, like we're just like a perfect little match. So perfect partnership, I'll say, because I prefer that we're partners. So but yeah, and I mean he's always wanted children as well. He's a little bit older than I am. Also previously married, he's had his share of life, he's gone through stuff. I think he's to the point where he also knows what he wants. So it's we have a lot in common and kind of our backgrounds of things as well. So yeah, there's no one else I'd rather face this with than him.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just rewind a little bit with the there was one question I wanted to ask in terms of the paperwork, because I heard you say paperwork to have, like, to adopt the embryos, and that is something I know many women just don't even think about, because they're your
Yeah,
eggs. Um
yeah,
wow. Like, so you had to do a whole like load of paperwork to have the rights
yeah.
to do that.
So I had spoken with someone who had done it, and I think she had like showed me kind of where to go because you can find kind of a draft online of how to do it. So I kind of drafted it out. The only thing is you really have to have the other person on board as well, because otherwise I think you'd have to go to court and get lawyers involved, and that's not something that we wanted to do.
Mm.
So for the first little bit, I didn't think that I was going to be able to use those because he really didn't want to kind of give them to me. But after some time and he agreed to it. So essentially it's just a little draft, like a little contract basically saying that I had all legal rights, that he would relinquish his rights to like parental rights, legal rights, financial rights, emotional rights, and all of that. And I actually needed to get that document to give it to the clinic because they wouldn't transfer it otherwise, right? Because you need to have both signatures on for any frozen embryo transfer. So kind of needed that. And I mean, nothing amounted from it because we weren't able to have success with those embryos, but I'm still thankful to have been able to transfer them because with each loss, I was able to get a little bit more information as to what's going on with my body and what's kind of causing the embryos to fail to implant and what's caused the miscarriage.
Yeah, yeah. So so now you're, at this sort of final retrieval stage. You said that you're ready to close that door after
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to quite a lot of women, and it does seem like you know, when
Yeah.
it's time to close that door. So how has that process been for you? And yeah, where are you at mentally with that?
Yeah, and it's funny because you say that you kind of just know, and that's just right. Because if you would have asked me a few months ago, even like last year, I would say no, I'm just going to keep going and all that. And I don't know what point or what happened that I was just like, you know what, I've done it all. But Curtis and I talk about it often, and kind of our end goal is really just to be parents. And we've talked about, where is that child coming from? Is it adoption, which right now we don't qualify for adoption, so that kind of avenues closed. And then we're like, well, is it egg donor? Well, that doesn't really make sense because he has male factor infertility. Is it sperm donation? Well, no, because I have diminished ovarian reserves. We're like kind of talking about what are our options. And at this point, we've kind of, in terms of egg retrieval, exhausted financially because it's incredibly expensive. Mentally, emotionally, the brain fog that comes with it of years and years and years. And I was just like, you know what? If this does not work out, then we think that our best kind of next step would be embryo donation because um, it just makes sense. But when you kind of look at all the other things, nothing really adds up. And so, and we keep saying, even if we are very lucky and very blessed, and our next transfer does work, the odds of us being able to have two children with the amount of embryos that we have is slim to none because of just looking from history of what has happened with us. But so I think even if this does work, our next step will also be embryo donation. Like I really feel it in my heart that that's how it's going to play out. And there's actually like a piece that comes with it. And probably if you would have asked me a year ago, I don't know that I would have said that. But now I'm just, yeah, I'm at peace with it. I feel like I've done everything. And that's all I could really do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's that's where the peace of mind comes from, because you've done it. You've done all that you can do. And, there really isn't anything else that you could possibly do. You've had the diagnoses, you've done all the treatments, and yeah, you kind of reach that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I know some people will go for a very long time, and yeah, and you don't
And
always get results, and it is one of those things where you know have to come to that decision. And I think you like you said, so
yeah, I just like weighed out all the options. And maybe if we had insurance that covered a couple more egg retrievals, I might say, you know what, let's just bank some out this year and then be done. But it just doesn't make sense anymore. When I say we've exhausted all of our financial kind of option, I literally mean the only reason we've been able to do this is through a GoFundMe that we've done, because otherwise there's absolutely zero chance that we'd be able to even have this opportunity. And so it's just, yeah, that's what it is. We just can't do it. And luckily I feel at peace with it. So yeah.
yeah, that's good. That's so good. I'm so glad that you feel at peace with that, because that's such an important thing. Like, and once that door is closed, like I've heard there is such sort of contentment, like with
Um,
that door being closed, because of that constant, like, all the cycles and just being on it, and you're on that treadmill. And yeah, once that door's closed, apparently there's just a lot of contentment, like once
yeah.
you
And
finish.
I think that's very true. And the one thing that I've kind of openly talked about too is that even though I'm kind of at peace knowing that this is the end of my egg retrievals, I'm also quite aware that there's still a grieving process that goes with it, right? So if it doesn't work out where we're able to use our embryos that we have created as a couple, even though I'm going to be completely on board with the embryo donation, there is still a part of grief that comes with that, right? And I think it's very normal, and it's okay to have these kind of two polar opposite feelings happening at the same time. I think it's very important to acknowledge that, and that it's okay. And it doesn't mean that if I'm grieving this, that I'm not okay with it. It's a lot. It's a life that you envision that is not how that is not how you envisioned, right? Turning out. So, and I think it's important to kind of acknowledge that grief and to feel it through, because otherwise it's just going to eat you up inside. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm working kind of through those motions as well, because I mean, we're not there yet, but I always kind of think ahead, of course. But I think it's important to kind of acknowledge all the feelings, good and the bad and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, as a lot of the times, when we're going through these processes, we don't actually have the time to acknowledge and deal with our grief. So we're doing the fertility treatments, we're doing all these things to make this dream happen. And then when we close that door, we think, okay, oh yeah, I feel better. But then all of that, all that trauma, all that trying, all that everything still has to be dealt with, because you can't deal with it while you're in it. It's too much while you're in it, because you're constantly in that cycle. So yeah, until you've closed the door, it's hard to handle, like to deal with all of those things. So yeah, you're right, there's two sort of segments to it. Just like when you are pregnant after loss, and you're sort of going through the emotions of, there's joy, there's hope, but there's also sadness, there's also anxiety, there's also stress and all these things, because the last one didn't go very well. So then you're like, well, I don't know how this one will go. And that's literally the whole process of trying to, or not, that we have to go through. It's crazy.
Mhm. No, absolutely.
So with your partner, you said he has some issues as well. So how has that been for you both?
Yeah, so Curtis has low morphology, and they say that out of all of them, that's like the best one to have, as in if you undergo IVF, they're actually able to go and pick the sperm that has normal morphology. So in that sense, it's fine, but his went from a 1% to a 0% at our last egg retrieval, which we believe was maybe due to the fact that he had COVID and he had a fever. And having a fever for male and women can actually affect your fertility for about 3 months at a time. So essentially it decreases your sperm count, and by decreasing your sperm count, therefore that percentage also lowers, right? But what that means for us is, say for instance, I didn't have all my issues and we wanted to try to conceive naturally. There's a good chance that we would be able to. It would just take a lot longer to conceive naturally. So the idea of us trying naturally is kind of comical in some sense, because as much as like we still are like, let's just try, it's like the odds are, like a 1%. So when people are just like, are you going to try this month? I'm like, well, I mean, you know, we're gonna do what couples do, but I mean, are we like hopeful that this is going to work? Like, uh, I don't know. So so that's that. But yeah, we're okay with it. I don't know. We both have our kind of issues. Obviously, like it's not what he was hoping for, but I also never place any blame on him. It's no one's fault really, right? So we're just kind of doing the best that we can with it. Um, at our old clinic, they thought his results were like pretty okay, but our new doctor has kind of labeled it as malfactor infertility, and so yeah, I mean, I think if we weren't doing IVF, maybe we talk a little bit more about what that would entail for us trying naturally. But since we are, it's just,
Yeah.
hoping that the embryologist is able to find some normal ones. Last round, they were, she said it was very, very difficult to even find like 5 normal sperm. So that was extremely kind of worrisome. Um, yeah, so that phone call was definitely difficult. Luckily, I don't produce a lot of eggs, so she didn't have to find a whole lot of sperm. No, I'm just joking. I have to find like humor in some of the stuff because it's one thing after another, right? But yeah.
Yeah, we have to find those like I know it's horrible. Like it is
It's like, what? Like, really? And you're like, well, okay, well, at least this.
yeah, well, at least each
Yeah.
egg has a sperm.
I mean, I would never say that to someone if they were in my shoes, but I can make fun of myself and
Yeah.
kind of laugh at it because you're almost kind of like, well, of course this would happen. Of course.
Well, it's like it's that whole thing of if you don't laugh, you'll cry. So you have to kind of do something, I think.
Get
Um,
it out. Yeah.
yeah. It's just sometimes it's horrible. Like my husband said a few things to me during the lost time. And we do laugh about it now. Like it's like it's sort of become a joke because, it was like, yeah, it was just terrible. Like it's just not what you say. Like at least he was like, at least it's not this. At least you
And
did.
you're like,
Yeah. So now it's
uh,
a running joke. But I think that actually does make it like easier. I know that sounds
yeah.
terrible, but
I know. Yeah. But I'm like, I can say it to myself, but I would never say it to someone else because I don't want to hurt you. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the thing is, everyone deals with grief in different ways, and I can deal with it in so many different ways. That's the thing. But exactly, you just gotta let it out. And sometimes you cry, sometimes you laugh and you cry. So whatever feels natural, just kind of get it out. So
yeah, laughing and crying, I didn't realize you can do both at the same time. That
oh,
that's definitely
yeah.
happened to me in this journey. And it was not fun, but it was definitely an experience.
Mm-hmm.
So after this, if things don't pan out the way we all hope, what did you guys have a sort of plan of next steps? I mean, you said about an
The
embryo.
embryo adoption, yeah. So embryo adoption would be our next step. So yeah, that's just kind of where, excuse me, that's just where we're at now. So we have those two embryos. Hopefully we produce a couple more next round. If those for some reason do not pan out, and then embryo donation. If that doesn't work, then we really have to just wait until we're able to adopt. And right now we don't qualify for adoption. So those are kind of our options. We're kind of like slim picking as to what we can do. So when people are saying, oh, why don't you just adopt? Or why don't you just do that? You're like, well, I can't, you know? So it's not easy, and it takes time, and it's expensive, and there's a process. There's just so many different steps to it. And I mean, I have looked into adoption, and I've talked about what it means, and I've looked into, and I said, oh goodness, like we don't qualify. So, you know, we have to kind of wait for that step. But I'm hopeful that somewhere between our own embryos and embryo donation, and that we will kind of be able to achieve pregnancy and maintain pregnancy and have a baby earthside. We've gotten a lot more answers since the miscarriage. I did an immune blood clot panel kind of for fertility loss. I can't remember exactly what it's called. And with that, we found out that I have immune issues and blood clotting issues, which could have caused or could be contributing to, the losses. So with that information, now we have this very thorough plan as to what we're going to do for the next transfer. And if I knew that they were euploid, I probably would feel more confident. But I'm like, oh, I'm doing all of this and I have no idea if they're normal. However, there's a 50% chance that each of them are normal. And I have produced normal embryos in the past, produced about 50% normal, which is very average for my age. So I'm hopeful, and the embryologist is hopeful, and the doctor is hopeful that we have one at least that's normal. So if we can get that and we can go and do all of the protocol that's in place, then literally we've done everything. Like I don't know what else we could possibly do. So I'm hopeful that, little embryo will stay with us. So
Well, I'll definitely be praying for you.
thank you.
It is crazy how many things like we can have that can impact growing
Absolutely.
babies.
I
I
know.
spoke with a lady, and she said she actually has the blood clotting issue, and
Okay.
she had like a special name for it. It was like factor something line.
Oh yeah, she's got, yeah, okay. I don't have that one, but yeah, that's a big
Oh,
one
okay.
as well. Yeah. The factor
Yeah,
V Lutein, I think, or something. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. And I was just like, wow, I didn't even know that could be a thing. And she's like, yeah, I had to be on blood thinners and stuff so I could carry my children, and it worked for her, which is fantastic. But yeah, and that was like 20 years ago. I was like, that's insane.
Oh wow, yeah. And we've come such a long way since then as well. So wow, it's good that she was able to kind of figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, her story is amazing. I'll link her in below in this one, because yeah, it was such a strange scenario. She had some weird rash and she went in to get it checked out, and then she ended up going to this like specialist to try and figure it out. But he happened to be a specialist who then took her and said, let's go for this test, because she just had a miscarriage when she actually was booked in to see him like that day. So she
Oh
was like
wow.
in there completely distraught. And he was
Oh
like, you know what? Let's do this test.
yeah.
Who thinks that? But anyway, this guy did, and good on him, because he
Brilliant. Yeah.
really
Okay.
covered it. So
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
that is. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm so glad that you're with like Curtis, and that you have this,
Yeah.
it's so nice to have someone on the journey with you.
It is. Yeah.
I will say, like, I mean, obviously, the two experiences would be completely, you know, sort of like flipping a coin almost, but from your ex-husband to your partner now, what has the experience been like going through it, like with that person, like with that partner?
I mean, it is like night and day. It's so different. I feel like previously I felt very alone in it, where I felt more that every time I would talk about what was going on, or every time I talk about my endometriosis or this and that, I felt like I was being like a burden. I felt like I was being annoying. He'd say, "Oh, that it's like all consuming," which it is, but it's a reality, and we can't just ignore it, right? You can't just pretend that it's not there. So I felt very alone, and that's truthfully why I started my like Instagram account. And looking back, I feel like that should have been kind of a red flag for me, because I had to kind of create this account that I had privately because I didn't want anyone to know about it. And he voiced very vocally that he thought talking about this kind of stuff and having like social media accounts about infertility and all that was quite like, or like he thought it was quite dumb kind of thing. And yeah, so all of these things where I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like now looking back, it's so easy looking back, being like, okay, there was all these red flags and all this. Um, but I feel like I knew that I needed that support. So looking back, clearly I wasn't getting that support at home. And I was definitely navigating it on my own. And not only that, but also physically on my own, because it was through the pandemic. So every appointment was by myself. The diagnosis was mine. It very much felt like he had put kind of an ultimatum on it as well. It was, if this doesn't work, then we're done. We're not going through any egg, sperm, embryo adoption. We're not adopting, nothing. It was that or nothing. And that puts a lot of pressure on anyone, right? Because we know when we're going through even a transfer, there's so much pressure of it working, and just knowing that, had it not worked, I would be living a childless, life is not at all. I don't think I would have been okay with it. But before we got there, it kind of ended, right? So now it's complete opposite, where we're like, we're going to try this. We're going to give it our all. If it works, it works. If not, we've got plan B, we've got plan C. Like we're good. We've got this. We're going to figure it out on our own. Like there's a 0% chance in our hearts that we are going to have a childless life. You know what I mean? Like in any way that we can make it happen, we're going to. We just don't know how it's going to happen. And I'm just so grateful that he actually is on board with having these other options, because I know a lot of people aren't, and that is such a personal choice, and I respect it. So it's fine, but I'm just so thankful that he's on board with kind of what I want as well. So we're both kind of going with it, and yeah, it makes a whole lot of difference. Yeah.
No, it's so good when you're on the same page. And I have spoken to a lot of women who, their partners weren't on the same page, or they only want to go so far, whereas she maybe wants to go really like a lot further and sort of hit consent, and I've seen the reverse as well, where the woman's like, I only want to go this far and then I'm done. Like I don't want to open any more doors. I'm done. So it's very interesting when you start seeing relationship dynamics, but it's really one of those things where it really helps when you're on the same page. And you talking about your experience just kind of shows that. My husband and I, we've always discussed things and sort of been on the same page. And I think it really does make a big difference, even if you experience loss or experience, going through this very differently. Just having that same goal, that same dream, I think is really useful in that. So just to remember properly, with your loss, Curtis was there, wasn't he? Yeah. So how was that experience? Because of it, I mean, it wasn't his. No,
that one was his. Yeah, it was. Do you mean how was it when we found out?
Yeah, like how did you guys sort of handle it? How was it mentally? Because obviously, you know, it was a very new relationship. You guys, you dove straight in, and then yeah.
So at that point, we've been together just shy of a year. And obviously gone through everything, but we went into the ultrasound. I was just really nervous because we had very low betas to begin with, but they kept doubling. So, you know, I was like, okay. I was really nervous that day. He was very hopeful. He's just like the most hopeful, kind of positive person you'll ever meet. And he just, to this day, he's like, oh, it's going to work. You know, he's telling his parents, well, we're doing this and then we're going to get pregnant. And I'm like, well, hopefully, you know. So I don't know if he realized the loss as it was happening because the ultrasound tech don't say much and the doctors didn't come in. So I could just see it on the screen that it just wasn't. And she told me that I was measuring like behind. And she said something along the lines of, oh, maybe you got your dates wrong. And when you're going through IVF, you know 100% exactly to the day what you are. So I think I might have realized it a little, just kind of a few seconds before he did, and then I kind of just like, yeah. I don't know if I cried initially. I don't think either one of us did. And I did after. I don't know, there's just kind of like a shock that comes with it. I don't know if it's denial or I don't know what it is. And then came kind of like all of the tears. And then we had to drive to Toronto, which is 5 hours away, for a DNC about 4 days later. And it was that Friday, I was driving on the highway, and that's when it all hit me. We were maybe 15 minutes from the clinic on this big highway, and I stopped the car. And I think I probably hit the the wheel a couple of times, and I just kind of like yelled and I started bawling. And then of course he had to go and drive the car. But I think that was that moment that was like, are you kidding me? Like what? Like we've gone through all of this, and like why is this happening? You know? So and then I'm definitely um more emotional than Curtis in that sense, and in the crying kind of way, I mean. But it really, I think he struggled with it. We struggle in different ways, whereas like I can still like look at our pictures and our videos from when we found out we were pregnant because it gives me some joy. And for him, I think it really like hurts him. And it's hard for him to watch those videos, you know, like where we found out that we're pregnant, and like it's the cutest thing. I'm so happy that we have it. It's like one of the greatest days of my life. But I know it really hurts him. So we grieve kind of similarly but differently as well. So yeah, it's been hard. But he still has that hope. So yeah.
That's really beautiful. I think it's always good when you have one of you that is that hope kind of character, because you do need it. You need that hope and that kind of like,
Yeah.
we'll do it. It will happen. Like my husband's like, we'll just try again. We'll just keep trying. Like, okay.
I know. And I feel like I actually am a very positive person, very hopeful, but also very realistic as well, where I'm like, I'm very hopeful, but I'm like, ooh, okay, hold on. But what's the percentage of this, right? Like I very much like facts. I like percentages. And even though I know, like I always fall on like the wrong side of the stats, like I still like to know about them. And I also think it's a way for me to protect my heart. So if I'm like, okay, well, there is a 50% chance of this, and if, and so I kind of do the math. I'm like, okay, so realistically, these are the odds. And I think I do that to kind of mentally prepare and to guard my heart. And I think that's the way that I handle it.
Yeah.
So.
Whereas he's like, well, someone's that 1%.
Well, yeah. And he's like, of course it's going to work. He's like, we're doing all of these things. Like, he's like, yeah, it's so great. We've got like 2 day 5 embryos. We've never gone day 5 embryos before. This is amazing. Like, he's like, they're going to be normal. Like, we're going to have twins. And I'm like, I love you. I don't think we're going to have twins, but I love you. And that would be amazing. But like he's just that person. Right. And yeah, it's great. Yeah.
That is awesome. No, it's lovely. And it could happen. So
sure, crazier things have happened.
And you know what? If it does, you'll never hear the end of it. I told you it
Oh
happened.
God,
I
I
said,
know. And I'll be like, you know what? This is the only time I'm so happy that I was wrong.
and you know what? I'm gonna pray that he's right and that he's gonna say that to you one day. He's gonna be like,
Oh,
see, told you everything was gonna work out. It's gonna be fine. I'll pray
yeah.
for twins too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that would be the goal. That would be like the dream, actually. I've always, it's so weird. I've always envisioned having twins my entire life. So, you never
Yeah,
know.
I don't know. It's I think it's like because of the diminished ovarian reserve as well. Like I've spoken to quite a few ladies now that have that,
Yeah.
and it's like it's really stressful and not having just one because they don't implant more than one, and there's all this like stuff and red tape, and I know that they say it doesn't actually necessarily change your chances if you try and put more than one embryo in, but then I have heard of some successes where there's been
I think,
that,
yeah, I think it
but
depends. I know
yeah.
that if you put like a good with a poor embryo, apparently that can be bad, but they classify a poor embryo as a C grade for whatever. Like these are just studies, and I just read one recently. Um, but I put in two last time, but they were both graded about the same thing. They're both same days, about the same grade, so both like in the good quality. And then the ones that we have now are both day fives, and the quality is like on the good realm as well. So we're gonna put those two in together actually,
Okay, so you're
because
one of
my
the ladies who they've allowed, because
mom,
like a lot of the time like they won't allow it, like the insurance won't
yeah,
cover it, or they just won't allow
yeah. So yeah, and I mean we have no coverage for that, so it's just out of pocket anyways. But based on my losses, my age, and the fact that they're not tested actually this time, they're gonna just yeah, we're gonna put them both in. But I'm just hoping for like a few more on the next round. So one day at a time. Breathe. Yeah.
I'm you know what, I'm with you with the one day at a time. I know some ladies, they're like, oh, I hate it when people say that, and it's like, but so many of us rely on it.
My gosh, I can't. Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh gosh, yes. Sometimes I'm like a minute at a time, just like a deep breath, just kind of, yeah.
Yeah, like that happened. Hey, let's move on. let's
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
doing something else now. I'm gonna eat some chocolate. That's
Oh,
what I'm
chocolate's
doing.
fantastic. Yeah. Love
That's
it.
my go-to.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, no, that's wonderful that he's so optimistic, and I hope that he's right. I don't like I don't like it when my husband's right, but um sometimes it's a really good thing when they're right.
Yeah. This would be the best. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's been the voice of reason throughout this whole thing, and I'm like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
why do you have
But that's
to?"
good. You kind of need that, right? You need that like little balance. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm
good.
like, but why can't I be reason? Because I'm too emotional.
I know, and I'm the same. He kind of balances me in the sense that when I feel things sort like if I'm very upset or whatever it is, like I kind of like need to let it out and I need to go through it. And I kind of have this system where it's typically a whole day. I'll have a day and you'll see it, either crying or I feel very like hopeless or whatever it is, and I'm just like nope, 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 nope. And I give myself 24 hours, and then the next day I'm like, okay, we've got this. This is what we're gonna do. Da 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 da. And then he's just like okay, yeah, because he just knows I go through this like very like it's like a yeah, it's a thing now. But he's good with it because I feel like a lot of people would get like upset. Like I feel like in previous relationships, like they would get upset about me feeling things through or like, oh, you're crying again or whatever it is, and just so crazy to even think that that would be normal. But he just lets me, and then once you let it out, you feel good again. Do you know what I mean? Like he's very supportive of it and like he'll like encourage me to like talk about it and whatnot. So it's yeah.
That's beautiful. My husband could be like mixed, like sometimes he's like, yeah, I'll let you deal with that, and then other times he's like, right, now let's think about it
Yeah.
logically. Let's, he's like, get out of the hole.
And then you're like, no, I'm stuck in the hole. There's no way out.
I need to deal with this. Okay, just the
No,
walls
no,
are
there's
closing in.
no way out. This is the end. Yeah, yeah, I've been there. So
It's amazing, like how we can be in those moments, and anyone who's listening right now, like you might be in that pit, you might be in that moment, but it doesn't last forever. Like as much
No.
as it feels like it does, as much as you feel like it's not going to go away, it will. You just have to keep breathing and keep moving and take it a day at a time if you need to. But if you don't like doing that, don't do it. But take it a day at a time if you need to.
Yeah. But I agree with that wholeheartedly. I really feel that, it always, so if it feels like this up high, it always comes back down every single time. So you just have to kind of like ride the wave, as I say it. And with everything in life, it will always feel calm after. But the important thing is to let yourself feel it through, right? But it does get manageable. I don't want to say it gets good or it's okay, because sometimes it's not, but it'll be manageable and you will be okay. And it's okay if you're not okay, but you're going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've got the strategy down pat for yourself, like how you work.
Yeah.
You have to go through it and then you kind of plan,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and everyone's so different. That's the thing. Like that's just what works for me. Like some people, don't want to talk about it and they'll do something else. I kind of, yeah, that's how I kind of handle it. That's how I process it. I also like going on walks, moving my body, kind of getting that air, going for a run, getting out of the house, like all these things to kind of change my mindset. Those are all healthy, but we all do things differently, right? Writing about it. I love to journal when I'm kind of in like going through it and then going back and reading, be like, wow, like look at how far I've gone through this. And um, you know, it changes you. It also shows you kind of who you are. I know that I'm really, really strong. I might not have known that. I know that like this has allowed me to kind of like use my voice to advocate for women's health and for the things that I'm passionate about. I'm, thankful to have met so many people along the way that are just such brilliant, beautiful like souls. Like those are all kind of the positives, the connections that I've made. Though that's pretty incredible. That warrants like something. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think yeah, being able to look back at that and just go, wow, like I have come through really far, and there's all these things that you know that are there to be grateful about, to be happy about. Like even in the misery, even in the hardship, like there are these really amazing things that have come of this.
Yeah.
And that's one way we can kind of move through. Before we finish up, is there anything that you'd want to say to anyone who's in this journey right now? They're in the throes of it as well. They're going through their IVF. They don't have that door in their sight. They're going through the motions. Yeah, is there anything that you might want to say to them? Something.
Yeah, so I think just being able to process what you're going through at the present time and knowing that this is just a season of your life. It's not your entire life. And I really feel that going through infertility is just that. And eventually, whether it's tomorrow or the next month or in a few years from now, that season will change. And it does for everyone in one way or another. And the most important thing is to have that support. So being able to find connections of others who have gone through it. And I always say that we have the absolute best community that there is, so there's not only is there Instagram, there's obviously Facebook groups. There's so many resources out there that I wasn't aware of, but you meet one person and then that turns into 2, 4, etc. Right. So there's groups for everyone. There's therapy, super important. That's something that I really recommend, so just being able to kind of prioritize yourself and to be your own advocate and to know if you want to take a break, like it's just kind of follow your heart and give yourself grace. And yeah, that's it. And then you are strong as heck. And if you don't feel it, that's okay too, but you'll get through it.
Yeah. And the other thing is like someone's looking at you going, you are so strong. Like even if
Mm.
you don't feel it and you're like, no, that's not me. Someone is
Yeah.
looking at you, like seeing your journey, and they're like, wow, you're an
Mhm.
amazing woman. So
Yeah.
you might not feel it, but other people are definitely.
Exactly. Because there are days that you're like, no, and then you get angry, like, oh, I don't want to be told that I'm strong or this and that, because you get so frustrated, but you really are, and that's the thing. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't have to feel strong all the time to be strong. Like, it's the fact that you're here,
Exactly.
still doing things, and you're still going for it. And even when that door closes, you're still strong. You did it.
Absolutely. It's all the steps, and strength doesn't need to look a specific way, right? Strength looks like it has so many different faces. And being able to cry and talk about your feelings, that's strength, right? Being able to get out of bed one day to go to work if you have to when you feel like you can't, that's strength. So it's the small things in life that you're doing that just shows, the person that you are and the ability that you have. And I really think that, yeah, what we go through is, you know, I wish that no one had to go through it. So, but yeah.
But we're all here, and we all love each other in this community. That is something I've felt from everyone I've spoken to. There's just so much love. And yes, there's a lot of ugliness, obviously, with what we've all been through, but there's this beauty of just this camaraderie and friendship and just that love. And yeah, so delve deeper if you're feeling like you don't have the community, because it's here. There's a whole load of us, and beautiful women like Sabrina. So thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story online, and being one of those voices, for so many, especially those who are in the throes of it, those who feel like they're in the darkness. And you really are like a light in that, because even though you're going through this still, you're sharing it and you're showing it. And like I said, like seeing pictures of you and Curtis, like I was like, that's so beautiful, that's so lovely. And it brings like a smile. I know that it's hard, and I know that it's not great to go through what we're all going through, but it's just beautiful to see those really like hopeful, wonderful moments. And I think that just helps everyone get through it.
Well, thank you so much for just taking the time to speak to me today, and for all the other interviews that you're doing. I'm looking forward to kind of hearing all about them. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Yeah, have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.